The stars did not care that he was dying. Captain Jaren Veth floated alone inside what was left of the Ilithian Grace, a warship that had once been the pride of the Rim Patrol fleet. Now, it was little more than a drifting graveyard. The hull was split in two, its bow twisted into a ragged sculpture of metal and plasma burns. Emergency lights blinked weakly, reflecting off floating shards of glass and frozen droplets of blood that hung motionless in the air like a macabre constellation. Every time Jaren's suit lights swept over a broken corridor or torn bulkhead, he half expected to see one of his crew still alive. He never did. It had been 3 days since the attack. 3 days since the Syndax raiders appeared from the void like ghosts, cloaked and silent until their first strike crippled his engines. 3 days since the civilian convoy he had sworn to protect had scattered in every direction, some escaping, some not. 3 days since he had fought with every last ounce of training and desperation, watching his gunners burn out their batteries, his pilots launch futile counterattacks, his crew die one by one. And now, he floated alone, kept alive by a failing suit with only a few hours of oxygen left. The silence pressed on him like a physical weight. It wasn't the calm, peaceful kind of silence he remembered from his youth, lying under the red skies of his homeworld. This was a suffocating, endless hush that swallowed everything, the kind of silence that made you question if the universe had forgotten you existed at all. He had screamed into the comms until his throat was raw. At first, he had shouted for his surviving crew, demanding a status report, ordering them to regroup. Later, when no one answered, he had cursed the Syndax, cursed the Confederacy for not sending reinforcements, cursed whatever gods might be laughing at him. But eventually, the screaming had stopped. The words had run dry. Now there was nothing left but breathing. Slow. Shallow. Each inhale a reminder that the gauge on his wrist was ticking down. Jaren's thoughts drifted. He saw their faces again, the helmsman, the chief engineer, the bright-eyed communications officer who had only been 21. He remembered how they had looked at him in those final minutes, waiting for orders he couldn't give, trusting him right up until the moment the Ilithian Grace's reactor went critical and tore the ship apart. His stomach clenched. He had survived by pure chance, flung into the void as the explosion ripped the ship's spine open. Survival didn't feel like victory. It felt like betrayal. A soft groan escaped him. He tried to shift, but his suit was stiff, its servos sluggish. He was tired, bone-deep tired, and the temptation to simply power everything down, to let the cold take him, whispered to him like a lover's voice. At least then the guilt would stop gnawing at him. But before he could give in, something changed. A sound, tiny, almost imperceptible, crackled in his helmet. A faint ping. His eyes shot open. For a moment, he wondered if it was just the madness setting in, some auditory hallucination brought on by isolation. But then it came again, sharper this time. Real. His suit's HUD flickered and came to life, projecting a single faint contact on long-range sensors. He blinked, focused, heart hammering. A ship. Somewhere out there, a ship was moving. No. It couldn't be Syndax, their sensor signatures were jagged, predatory. This one was different. Clean. He zoomed in on the data, cycling through recognition codes. Not Syndax. Not Ilithian. Not any known fleet. Then the computer found a partial match and his breath caught. Human. The word seemed to echo inside his skull. Humans were a rumor out here on the Rim, the subject of military briefings and hushed strategy sessions. A species that had risen from the galactic backwater and advanced at a terrifying pace, fighting anyone who stood in their way. No one really understood them, but everyone feared what they might become. And now one of their ships was here. Jaren's gloved hand trembled as he activated his emergency beacon. A burst of light pulsed from his suit, scattering into the void like a desperate flare. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then darkness again. He stared into the black, waiting. Nothing. Minutes crawled past, and dread coiled in his stomach. Maybe they hadn't seen him. Maybe they had seen him and didn't care. Humans were said to be pragmatic. Why waste resources on a half-dead enemy officer drifting in a war zone? Then, the contact changed course. They were coming toward him. For the first time in 3 days, Jaren's heart surged with something other than despair. Hope flared hot and bright inside him, and with it, fear. What would they do when they found him? Take him prisoner? Kill him outright? Or worse, leave him floating after all, but with the knowledge that he had been so close to salvation? His breathing quickened, fogging the inside of his visor. He forced himself to slow it down, to stay calm. The ship was closing fast now, a silent hunter against the stars. Its silhouette was alien but unmistakably human, angular hull, broad engine fins, no wasted lines or decoration. Its hull glinted in the faint starlight, bearing a single insignia, a blue and white star. Jaren watched it approach, torn between terror and relief. The silence between stars had been broken. And whatever came next would decide whether he lived, or if this was simply the final act of his long, lonely death. The human ship closed the distance like a predator homing in on prey. Jaren floated in stunned silence, watching the silhouette grow larger until it dominated his visor. It was unlike anything he had ever seen before, sleek but brutal, angular plating glinting against the distant light of a star, bristling with weapons that looked far deadlier than anything the Ilithian Confederacy fielded on its front lines. The ship exuded purpose, a warship designed to kill efficiently and survive what followed. A sudden burst of sound shattered the tense stillness inside his helmet. "This is Captain Rhea Solari of the Artemis. Identify yourself." The voice was crisp, calm, and unerringly controlled. It took Jaren several seconds to realize it wasn't just some hallucination, that it was real. His throat tightened. He had not spoken in days, and when he finally found his voice, it cracked like brittle glass. "See, Captain Jaren Veth. Ilithian Navy, survivor of the Ilithian Grace. Requesting asylum." There was a pause. Jaren felt sweat prick at the back of his neck despite the suit's temperature regulation. The silence stretched for long, punishing seconds as he imagined the humans debating whether to save him, kill him, or simply leave him to drift. Finally, the voice returned, sharp and decisive. "Hold position. We're bringing you aboard." The relief that hit him was so intense it made him dizzy. His suit spun slightly in the void as if mocking his fragile grip on reality. A docking craft detached from the Artemis, its thrusters firing in precise bursts as it approached. The sight was both mesmerizing and terrifying, human technology moving with the grace of a hunting animal. The craft halted just meters from him, a hatch cycling open. A figure emerged, clad in a dark exosuit with glowing strips along the arms and chest. "Mag clamp on," the human ordered through the comm. Jaren obeyed, activating the magnetic grips on his boots. The moment he was secure, a tether shot from the craft and locked onto his suit. Then he was pulled toward safety. The first breath of warm, recycled air hit him as he crossed into the human craft's airlock. The door sealed behind him with a hiss, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, the void was gone. Gravity reasserted itself as the artificial field engaged, and his knees buckled. Hands caught him before he hit the deck. "Easy," someone said, their voice steady. "You're safe now." Safe. The word sounded alien. They removed his helmet, and Jaren sucked in a ragged breath, the air warm and heavy compared to the thin taste of his failing suit supply. His vision swam, but he could make out faces now. Humans, their features sharper and more angular than his own species, their eyes bright and alert. There was no fear in their movements, no hesitation, only efficiency. By the time they got him aboard the Artemis, Jaren was half conscious. He vaguely registered metal corridors, humming engines, and an atmosphere of restrained urgency that reminded him of his own ship before battle. They brought him to the med bay, laid him on a diagnostic bed, and machines began scanning his body with humming beams of light. Pulse irregular, oxygen saturation low, one of the medics reported. Suit injuries, mild radiation exposure, dehydration. Fix him, another said simply. Nanite injectors hissed against his arm, and cool fluid spread through his veins. His breathing steadied. For the first time in days, the ache in his chest eased. When he finally opened his eyes fully, a new figure was standing at the end of the bed. Captain Rhea Solari. She was taller than most of the crew, her dark hair cropped short, her posture radiating authority. There was nothing overtly threatening about her, yet Jaren felt as though she could read every thought behind his eyes. Her expression was calm, but there was a sharpness to it, like a blade just sheathed. "You fought Syndax raiders," she said without preamble. "Yes," Jaren rasped. His throat still felt raw, but he forced himself to sit up a little. "They destroyed my ship. My crew is gone." Her gaze softened just slightly, the faintest glimmer of empathy passing through her eyes. "You're lucky to be alive." Jaren shook his head bitterly. "I don't feel lucky." For a moment, there was silence between them, neither accusing, neither apologizing. Then Rhea gestured to a nearby console, where a star chart shimmered with red markers. "We've been tracking Syndax movements for weeks. They're no longer just raiding outposts, they're coordinating. Someone is directing them." Jaren felt a spark of grim recognition. They had a formation, tighter than I've ever seen. Their fire patterns were perfect, as if they knew our countermeasures before we deployed them. Rhea nodded, her jaw tightening. "Then it's confirmed. This isn't just piracy anymore, it's the first stage of a campaign." "And my government?" Jaren asked bitterly. "They'll sit in council chambers and argue about whether to mobilize while the rim burns." Rhea didn't deny it. "Which is why we're here." Jaren frowned. Humans patrolling Alithian space? That could be seen as an act of aggression. Her expression was flint. "If the Syndax break through your lines, it won't just be your problem. We don't wait for threats to reach our colonies. We hunt them where they are." There was steel in her words, and something about the way she said we sent a shiver down Jaren's spine. Humanity did not posture. They acted. The medics finished their work, and Jaren swung his legs off the bed, unsteady but standing. Rhea watched him carefully, then inclined her head. "You've seen their tactics up close," she said. "You know their formations, their strength, their weaknesses. We need that knowledge." Jaren hesitated. He should have demanded repatriation, insisted they return him to Confederacy space. Instead, he found himself recounting every detail, every vector, every weapon signature, every ship class that had been in the Syndax strike force. The memory hurt like a blade twisting in his chest, but he gave them everything. When he was finished, Rhea's expression darkened. "Then it's worse than we thought. They're massing beyond the rim. Next strike will be bigger." Jaren looked at her, something sparking in his hollow chest for the first time since the attack. "Then what will you do?" Rhea's answer was quiet, but there was fire in it. "We do what humans have always done when the galaxy threatens us. We fight." Jaren held her gaze. The silence stretched, charged with unspoken meaning. He realized then that his rescue had not been the end of his ordeal, only the beginning of something far larger. Something that might reshape the entire war. And for the first time, Jaren was not sure if he was just a survivor, or about to become a soldier once more. The Artemis surged through the void with predatory precision, her engines burning cold fire as she carved a direct course toward the Syndax strike zone. On the bridge, every surface glowed with tactical overlays, red and yellow icons blooming across the star chart like a spreading infection. The crew moved with flawless coordination, silent, efficient, every hand working as if they had drilled for this exact scenario 1,000 times. Jaren stood near the tactical display, still wrapped in the faint ache of recovery. He could feel the tension humming through the deck beneath his boots. He had seen warships ready for battle before, but there was something different about this, something sharper. The Artemis didn't feel like a ship heading toward a fight. She felt like a blade being drawn. Multiple Syndax contacts on scope, the sensor officer reported. 33 ships. Composition: light destroyers, strike corvettes, 3 capital carriers. They're forming a pincer around the trade lanes. Rhea stood at the center of the bridge, her arms folded behind her back, eyes locked on the display. Then we break the pincer. Her voice was calm, but it carried like the toll of a bell. Orders flowed from her like water. Weapons hot. Drone bays 1 through 5, prepare for launch. ECM suites to full power. Lock-in jump intercept course. We go in fast and hit them harder than they expect. Jaren's chest tightened as the ship came alive around him. Panels shifted open, exposing racks of sleek hunter-killer drones. Missile pods armed with a quiet, mechanical click. The bridge lights dimmed to combat readiness, bathing everything in crimson. Moments later, space tore open ahead of them as the Artemis executed a microjump, reappearing inside the Syndax formation like a thunderclap. Jaren grabbed the edge of the console to steady himself, adrenaline surging. Targets acquired, said the gunnery officer. Fire. The void exploded. Rail cannons thundered, streaking hypersonic slugs across the dark. Missile salvos ignited like brief stars, each one a guided death. Syndax ships reeled under the sudden assault, their formations collapsing as the Artemis struck with surgical precision. The drones darted ahead like wolves, weaving through enemy fire and ripping into corvettes with plasma lances. Jaren watched, awestruck. The Ilithian navy fought with formations and doctrine, rigid and controlled. This was something else entirely. The humans fought like predators, every strike meant to cripple, every volley exploiting a weakness. It wasn't a battle. It was a dismantling. Enemy carriers deploying fighter wings, the tactical officer called. Launch counter-swarm, Rhea ordered. The Artemis disgorged her own drones, smaller, faster, deadlier. The 2 swarms clashed in a silent ballet of death, tracer fire painting lines of light across the void. One by one, Syndax fighters went dark, consumed by precision strikes. Boarding pods ready, came another voice. Rhea nodded. Launch. Secure intelligence if possible. Destroy everything else. On the tactical display, Jaren watched as black spear-like pods shot from the Artemis, embedding themselves into Syndax hulls. Moments later, biosign readings showed human marines spilling into the enemy ships, their life signs moving like a tide. Gunfire bursts flashed on the readings, then went still as compartments were cleared. It was over in less than 20 minutes. Where once 33 Syndax ships had prowled, there was now only burning debris, tumbling silently through space. The few that tried to retreat had been hunted down by drones and cut apart. Not a single civilian transport had been touched. The bridge was quiet as the crew worked through post-battle checks. Smoke drifted from a sparking console somewhere aft, the only sign the Artemis had taken any damage at all. Jaren turned to Rhea, still stunned. Ilithian High Command would have taken hours to mount a counteroffensive. You destroyed an entire strike group in minutes. Rhea glanced at him, her expression grim. This was just a vanguard. There will be more. Jaren looked at the field of wreckage on the display, feeling both triumph and dread. And you'll fight them all? Her answer was simple, but it carried a weight that chilled him. Until they learn fear again, yes. Silence fell between them for a long moment. Jaren thought of the Ilithian grace, of his crew who had trusted him with their lives. He thought of the Confederacy counselors, who would debate endlessly while the Syndax massed for war. He thought of the emptiness of space and how close he had come to dying alone. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady. "I'll stay. I owe my dead more than silence." Rhea studied him for a moment, then extended her hand. Jaren clasped it, feeling the weight of the decision settle into him like armor. "Then welcome to the fight, Captain Veth," she said. Beyond the viewport, the stars still burned, cold, distant, eternal. But they no longer seemed indifferent. They seemed to watch. And this time, Jaren wasn't just surviving. This time, he was ready to make them remember his name.